And while some in the U.S. are protesting against the much-debated health care reforms proposed by Barack Obama, many question some of his other campaign promises, which they say aren't being kept. And our correspondent in Washington, Priya Schreeder's guest is Thom Hartmann, who is a New York Times bestselling author and host of a popular radio show. Well, hello, Priya. So what are the main points of criticism of Obama's policies?
Hi, Kelly. Well, you know what? Many Americans are absolutely outraged. They say that President Obama hasn't followed through on any of his campaign promises. And joining me to help talk about this is radio host Thom Hartmann. Thom, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, Priya. Great to be here.
So first of all, I want to ask you, I know you recently wrote an article where you said that Barack Obama didn't bring the, quote, change that he campaigned on. What did you mean by that?
Well, if anything, the opposite. I said first he came for the banksters and showered them with money in a way that wasn't change we could believe in, and and then he went to the war profiteers and showered them with money and gave them more of our young people to die in Afghanistan. Our troop levels in Afghanistan in a couple of months are going to be right where they were when Gorbachev said enough. It's point after point after point. President Obama is. He's done some good things around the edges, but point after point after point on the really big stuff, he's not challenging the real power brokers in this country. And that was the change that I think got people out on the streets, walking door to door, day after day, people taking a month off of work to work for this man. And it's not the kind of change that people want.
And so why not? I mean, why hasn't he brought that change that he campaigned on? I mean, you're saying that he is continuing a lot of the Bush-era policies. Why is he doing that?
The story is told that Bill Clinton, who campaigned on what he called the New Covenant campaign, which was basically a very progressive platform in 1992, that 2 weeks before he was sworn into office, after he'd won the election, Robert Rubin and Alan Greenspan sat him down and said, Bill, we know you campaigned on a populist progressive platform, but we're going to tell you the facts to life. You got to get in bed with the banksters. You got to go along with the big money people. If you do, we'll take good care of you. You'll be a rich man, and you'll be a successful politician. And it may well be that somebody had the same conversation with Obama. I don't know.
But, you also mentioned in your article that you don't think he's going to get away with it because people are, quote, high information voters. I mean, what did you mean by that? Can you explain that to me?
Sure. We had from World War I right up until around 1970, Americans were paying a lot of attention to politics because there was World War I, there was the shock of the Great Depression, there was World War II, there was the Vietnam War. All of those things had a large political component to them. So Americans were paying attention to what their politicians were saying and doing, and most Americans were high information voters. After the end of the Vietnam War in the 70s, people went to sleep. They started discoing. There was the era of home entertainment centers and big blockbuster movies and basically tabloid journalism. And Reagan came along and said greed is good, and it was lifestyles of the rich and famous. And for 20 years, people really weren't paying that much attention to politics. And during the Clinton years, that included, because times were good. Who cares, about politics? And so Clinton was able to get away with basically creating a giant bubble and inflating the thing and giving away our industrial infrastructure with NAFTA and WTO. Nobody noticed. But now, because the economy is so bad and because we have a president who campaigned on, I'm going to be the populist leader like FDR was, who's going to lead us out of the woods, lead us out, the promised land, we have a lot of high information voters now, particularly young people, and they are not going to take this lying down. And that's what I'm hearing, is that they're not. They're mad as hell.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if those high information voters will be able to hold President Obama accountable. Mr. Hartmann, I want to thank you so much again. But for now, Kelly, I'm going to throw it back to you in Moscow.